Hey, welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt. I'm here with Chris Mosley and Tyler Lamond.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome,
How's it
guys.
going?
All right.
Greetings to you too. Greetings to you too. Good to see you both again. I'm glad you got a chance to see me. It's good to be seen, not viewed.
Look, if it's one thing I cared about is being seen. That's how you get jobs.
Right. That's what my friend used to say. I said, "Why are you saying that?" He said, "Because if you're being viewed, you're probably dead. So it's good to be seen." So that was what I was saying. It's good to be seen, not viewed. So there you go.
That's it. Well,
Hmm.
so what's new in your worlds?
What's new?
Mm-hmm.
It's same stuff.
Are you still in
Different stuff.
quarantine, or are you in a state that doesn't
Oh, I went out today. I went to the mall, did some shopping, went to Nordstrom's. I got me a Foot Locker.
I
I
went
got
to the beach.
shoes. Yeah, we've been doing it. Like they said, Texas is open, and I was the first people through that, like those doors, like it was Black Friday.
All the dance halls are open. I went out and just kind of danced my little booty off, and it was a lot of fun. It was really crowded. I was bunched up like shoulder to shoulder with people, and there's a few people coughing, but it's fine.
It's terrible.
Actually, I was on
No, I'm definitely joking. By the way,
I was on Xbox Live playing some video game the other day, and somebody coughed in the chat, and then somebody else in the game was like, "Oh, man," and like left the game.
that's
Wow.
crazy. Well, no, I'm still in quarantine. I will keep myself an extended amount of time. So yeah, so same. Everything's still the same on this end. Same
Yeah.
on this end.
We're doing the
Yeah.
same as well. So,
Yeah. So we're still still teaching them one click at a time,
yeah.
one
click-
Zoom call at a time,
That's all you can do.
Call.
yeah, one virtual classroom at a time.
So,
Do you actually think you think those classrooms are going well? You think your kids are actually learning?
You know,
That's
I
a no.
do
That
you know. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. Uh, I think my kids are learning. I think the amount of information. So, we made a shift from not giving any grades at all to giving these letter grades. So one thing that we were doing at the beginning when we were first starting, like our online stuff, was just is like to maintain. Like you couldn't teach any new information, right?
yeah.
Uh, so we really were not. We were just kind of getting them to be there, morale checkers, kind of, making sure they're okay. Now I'm still trying to give information, but it's like very small. Like in my in-person classroom, like I would have a list of things that I want them to get and grasp, and I'd be able to get them to like put in their toolbox of things. But now it's just like one tiny minute thing that they can take and then move forward, and then the rest is just keeping morale up, like entertaining them, like getting them engaged, and being able to reconnect back to the focus that they need to be able to be successful. That's pretty much it. So I would say that they're learning. The amount of information that they are learning from me has changed, and it's just because our priorities have changed. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it's not that I'm being a bad teacher. It's just that I'm not trying to want to overload the kids, and our medium has changed, our venue has changed. So still getting them to receive information, just smaller amounts. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense, you know what I'm saying?
That's the same.
What about you? Do you feel like what you're doing?
Um, yeah, kind of the same deal. I think that because I think about like online teachers that do this all the time, like especially universities and stuff. Because like if you were an in class, I don't know what to say.
In class, yeah.
Yeah, and a face to face class, like how most public school is, then you had to really change and adjust things. And like a lot of people were, I think a lot of people in the country are like, just do a little bit, because it's like different or and like whatever. But like, what about those teachers that like were already like their entire curriculum was already based online, and then it makes me think like, how much do you actually, how much do you actually learn through an online course?
Well, that's a good question. I think you just
Came
completed
up
an
with
online degree,
I
right?
did.
Yeah, Pratt. So how much do you
Yeah.
think you actually
So
learned
tell me
through that
about that,
online?
and tell me like what are the important things that you think are important to like be able to still receive information and learn when it's online?
Well, I actually think that the structure that we had in our course was actually pretty good. Um, and I found that I think I preferred it because I could totally do it at my own pace. And so
Y'all, did y'all ever have like the face to face stuff at all?
no, well, we did occasionally. We did some web conferencing, but we never went like to a physical location. So
That's what I meant. Like so like we do now, like an online class where we have a couple people at a time where you can have dialogue and whatever. Real time class. Did y'all ever have any of that?
once a week they would do basically kind of like a seminar, like they would give a weekly lecture, but it wasn't, you couldn't see the other students unless they opened up a video and let someone speak. Most people just gave chat comments, so the chatters, and so there was a lot of
Right.
that. And it was it was funny because most of it was off topic, and you
Like the
know
chatters do.
like just like a chatter does. But at the end of the day, I liked it because, like, for example, you had the option of watching that live, or they would record it and you could go back. Well, I mean, it would be like every Tuesday night at 7. Okay, well, that's not happening. So 9 times out of 10, I would. In fact, I never in my entire degree ever once watched a live lecture. So I always watched the recorded version, and I liked that. I like being able to do it at my own pace. And I think when you're in it, you feel like a lot of this is busy work. But then I think after
That was a question. The question was, did you feel like it was busy work and not actually intentional scaffolded like curriculum?
I think at
Like,
the
do you
time,
feel like you learned?
I do. I think at the time I felt like it was busy work because you're having to do it. But then now that I kind of look back on it, I see the purpose of it all, and I kind of go like,
How much more are you different now than when you started? Like, because I felt like whenever, like, from the time I started my master's to the time I finished, I like totally changed in the way I thought and everything. But I was immersed in it, and I was in there every day, being like challenged and whatever. And I had
Yeah,
to
because you
change
did
how I
yours
thought
face
and
to
whatever.
face,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. So I'm asking from like that's kind of the contrast that we're making, where the comparison is
Hmm.
like, how different did you feel whenever you were done from when you started?
I don't think I felt like I'm a changed person. I didn't feel like that. I felt like I
Or
had.
like, I guess changed.
Here's what I think I felt like, because it was kind of unique because I transitioned into an administrative role while I was still taking my courses. Okay. So I think that from the time I started my administrative role and I started those classes till the time I finished, by the time I was finished, it was like I suddenly, like, through that time, I understood what I needed to know. Like, before, you don't know what you don't know. But then
Right.
once I was done with the course, I was like, oh, I actually know what they're talking about. And this is what administrators talk about. Like, all these
Yeah.
classes that I went through, like, this really is what they have to deal with. And it wasn't busy work. And it kind of made me realize, like, this is very practical.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So I found
So
it valuable. I liked it. And I mean, like, I personally think for me, if I were a student right now in 2020, I would be looking for an opportunity to continue online education, me personally, because there are so many things I want to do outside of school time, that if it means that I can get things done faster or shift my schedule so that that chunk of time in the day isn't reserved, then I think for me that benefits my life.
now, do you think that's because you're older?
Maybe.
That
Because
might be.
like I think about that too, is that maybe online classes is more geared toward I don't want to say more mature, but someone who has a lot more life experience, who, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that you want to do during the day, like spend time with your family, be with your daughters, like your wife, like whatever, where like a 14-year-old or 12-year-old doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really have that. Now I know it's flipped, like, it's their mom and dad, but I mean,
Right.
what 13-year-old boy wants to just hang out with their mom? You know
Right.
what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, because they want that social interaction that they can only get.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too.
So
So
I
that's
get
that's what
that.
my kids like have been saying the most is they're missing the social part of it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they're missing. I don't think they. I mean, some of them do. Uh, whether they have in person instruction or virtual instruction, they just miss the interaction part of it, And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And
Not
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say, and I think that there's so much of the social and emotional learning that goes on face to face in a classroom, especially at the younger age, that you don't really necessarily need when you're older. Like, I mean, I'm planning on going back and getting my master's in something soon, and
Really?
yeah, and I
That's
don't
good.
think that I think that I'm gonna do it in online because I'm not craving that social interaction. Would it be
Mhm.
nice to be immersed in it and like 100%, but it's not a deal breaker for me
And
right
see, you
now.
know what? Like mine, we had the option to like do it part time, so some of it would have been online, and I chose to like I wanted to do full time just because I need the interaction, I need the real life, real time things to make a huge like a bigger impact on me. Like if
Mhm.
I would feel like if I did things online, it would be busy work, and I would just try to check those boxes so I can just get a piece of paper.
Mhm.
And I think like being in the environment, it transforms you because you become the new experience, and the world that you're in, it makes you think a different way, and then that becomes your default. And so when you get out of that world, you still have that to fall back on. When we're doing online stuff, you're in the world that you're already comfortable in, I guess, kind of, and it's harder to transform your thinking when you're in the world that you've always been in.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
that yes, that's definitely something that I've strongly considered when thinking about doing online or not.
Yeah,
Um,
it would be
it
harder for me.
Yeah, because I took some online classes when I was in college and I dropped every single one of them. And
Hmm.
one of the only classes that I ever failed in college was a blended learning course where I had to go to class 1 day a week and then I had online stuff the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And like, I don't feel like I learned anything during that because like I felt like I really, and I was way younger at the time, like it was still pretty early in my college career, but like I really needed that one-on-one, like face-to-face interaction with my teacher.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I was really glad that I only had that once a week, and then I was able to do my rest of my work online. I think the main reason why I failed that course was because I had never really experienced online learning in any type of degree at all up until then, and I
Hmm.
wasn't. I was used to, oh, I didn't do my work. It's fine. I'll talk to the teacher and I'll turn it in. Compared to this is a computer and there's a deadline. It's over. I now have a zero,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's a lot harder for a teacher to accept work that's late at that way.
Yeah. And you
So,
got to think about too, like when it's school, like especially for the older kids, you go to bell, your your surroundings change 6, 7 times a day, you know,
mhm,
and in one room you have this one teacher, and this environment's like this, and kids like certain things trigger how they respond and how they listen and things like that. And then you're in the hallway and they act a certain way, and then you're in the lunchroom, they act another way. So their brain is getting triggered by different things, and their responses are different, I think, because like I know whenever they come in my classroom, the first thing I want them to do is like transfer, like change how you were out there, come in here, and boom, I want to change your environment, so you can learn at a higher level. So the hard thing now is like whenever you're doing online, your environment stays the same, and maybe the level at which you have to learn might have to change to, like whatever
yeah,
subject, you have to think differently. Like if I'm sitting in a math class, I'm thinking a certain way. If I go to an English room, I'm thinking another way too. When I'm in band, I think a different way to be able to get this information. But if I'm in my bedroom and I have to think a certain way for English and math and whatever, and my brain is not kind of jumping and cutting on and getting higher, that's probably a hard thing too, and we're not thinking about that.
yeah, no,
You know what I'm saying?
that's a really, really good point because, like,
Yeah.
I remember thinking that, like, being in the band hall when I was in high school trying to do homework, and I remember finding it really, really difficult to do that because I was in the band hall, things were loud, and, like, this isn't where I do math, this is where, like, I play on a drum and I'm loud
Hmm.
myself,
Right.
And then, I
That's
remember
like.
same things like being in my room. Like I couldn't do homework in I had like this little. It wasn't really like a reclining chair, but it was like this little makeshift little chair, and I used to play video games in it. and like I couldn't sit in that chair to do homework even though it was really comfortable.
Right.
One, because it was comfortable, and then two, because it was like that my state of mind was like when I'm in this chair, like I'm playing a game.
Right.
I'm not focused on stuff. But I do think that there's something to be said. Like, I mean, Eric Erickson has his 12 stages of psychological development, and a lot of those developments come through the social interaction that you get while growing up. And like that's one of the reasons that like when you're in junior high, those kids like they enter different rooms and different things get triggered or like whatever, because like their brain is still developing. So I wonder what's happening to the development of a child's brain while they're staying at home. Is it a good thing? Is it because they're around the same their mom and dad, and their mom and dad are like, they're around them 24/7, and they're getting those social morals and cues and whatever from their mom and dad? Or is it a bad thing because they're only getting stuff from their mom and dad, and they're already at the age where they're trying to break away from that, and they care more about what their friends are doing, but now there's a void there in their art, there is no friends, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
There
think it
are no
depends on
friends.
the situation. It depends on the parents and how they're responding to things and their level of involvement, in that,
Mm-hmm.
'cause, like I know some of my teacher friends that are home with their kids, like school's in session. They're challenging their kids, they're talking to their kids. So those kids will probably come out okay. For those other ones, for the parents that they're just, you know, and parents do the best they can. They're just not equipped to kind of be the teacher and the parent at the same time. I mean, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
kind of do both, but um, those are going to have issues. Or the ones that the parents don't know how to reach their kids that way to be able to challenge them. That's going to be an interesting case.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I saw a meme the other day online. It was someone painted on their car. It said, "You lied to me. My kid is not a joy to have in class."
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
So okay, so we were talking earlier, and it kind of made me think about something. So Pratt, um, you know, I've known you for a long time, I
real
was
long time.
30, 40 years, something like that. Um, but we're talking about like online versus like in person.
Mm-hmm.
I think for someone like you, who I mean, you're gonna do what you're supposed to do and challenge yourself or whatever. Your experience would be the same. You might get a little bit different, like something different, but how we talked about a student, like you can learn from a rock.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I think the conversation, like kind of moving forward, and it's kind of how I've started to get my kids to think is like the kids, and it's easier whenever you're there, like you're with them, but it's something to like discuss. Is like putting and having the kids evaluate the way that they're like learning. Like putting the ownership on them. And saying, okay, I can give you all the information possible. Right? If you receive it at level 1, you'll get this much. Level 2, 3, 4. So they can evaluate how they're receiving information. So if you get the kids to elevate that, I think the virtual learning thing can be what it can be, because it's not just the teachers doing this, it's the teachers doing this and the kids like trying to get it too, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to receive it and not letting this barrier be in between because they know that it's really on them regardless. I think for those that started ahead of time about like what type of level learning you are, and how you can be any level learner at any time. But the ones who are the high levels or the ones that are going to achieve and be more successful in the long run. Um, that's whenever I think things can get better. But I think that's kind of something you had to start. I mean, or at the beginning of the year, if things are starting like this, you know what I'm saying? That's
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
something we might want to like kind of put out there and have teachers to evaluate, is and not so much. I mean, you're gonna have to have the relationship part, but to have that conversation with the kids about their learning
Yeah, because
because
it's on them.
yeah, it's on them. So you're not just fighting them. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you this. Did you receive what I just said? Okay,
Yeah,
because you know what I'm saying. So it's on both levels.
because when you're in person, it's way easier to fight the student to make sure that they got the information and that they're engaged
Hmm.
compared to when it's online. When it's online, you don't have the ability to like really pound it into the student to make sure that
Right.
they learned what they needed to learn. And I would go to say that the the older you are, the easier it is to do an online learning session, and the better of the subject you are, the better you are going to do it with online stuff. So, like, the younger you are or the worse you are at a subject, online learning is going to be very difficult for you just because of a difference between just being poor at a subject or needing that social and emotional learning step of understanding how things work. Because I think
Hmm.
a lot of those social skills go hand in hand and understanding problem solving skills in general. But to go back to like what you were talking about, it's very internal. Like when you're doing an online class or something like that, it is 100% internal.
It's
Like
you.
that, yeah, that teacher's
It's like
not
you.
going
It's
to
on you
be,
now. So that's a
yeah,
big thing.
that teacher's not going to be sitting there like pounding it into you or whatever. They're going to say like, here's this lectures, here's this, here are the activities. You're either going to do them or you don't because I have no control over it. Like I'm not going to be able to pull you out in the hallway and have a talk with you
Yeah.
and tell you why you need to be engaged in class. You're
Yeah.
either are or you aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the conversation is like to kind of put in our admins um, toolbox, I guess, or on their board because I know like they're planning things for professional development, and they
Mm-hmm.
have one side like if we start school normally, if we don't, like on one side needs to be um, students ownership of learning and what things we can do to like raise that up, and not in a hey, this is what you need to do, but like, hey, you got to think about this because what I'm doing is for you, and guess what? I can do all this all day long, and then if you don't receive it, then you don't benefit in the end, and making it relevant for them so they understand and don't like mince your words, just like tell them have them evaluate themselves and like have that be the forefront of the conversation and have teachers like understand how to do that. I think the results will be better than they would if we just like dive in like, hey, we're virtually learning this like now and then go.
Yeah.
So you got the relationship part, student ownership of learning part, culture, as much culture you can do with virtual learning and stuff like that, and you'll be okay, I think.
So, what you kind of hit on was ownership. And I was thinking about that. And right now, the students who are probably thriving and probably the teachers who are thriving in this environment are the ones who take ownership over what they do, whether it's a student for their learning or a teacher for their teaching. And this makes me think of this because I have always learned to take ownership of my stuff, whether it was as a student or an educator or just as a human being.
Yeah, that's why I gave you a compliment earlier.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that for Teacher Appreciation Week?
Yeah, that's for Teacher Appreciation Week. So I
Thank you.
appreciated you for being a good teacher.
That's good. So
You're welcome.
I was actually listening the other day to a video by Phil Schlechte. I know a lot of people have heard of the Schlechte Center, and they're like big time.
Oh yeah, they're good. They're real good.
Yeah, they're big time.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
Never heard of them
it's-
either.
Sorry.
If you haven't, you should. They're big time shapers of like educational philosophy and like frameworks of education. It's really good stuff. And Phil Schlechte said this, and this has really stuck with me and made me think. And he said that when you don't give students choice, you cause them to be dependent. And so right now, what we're seeing is a lot of kids who don't take ownership over their work. Why? Because they've been in a system that perhaps has not given them any choice over their work. So they don't have to take ownership because they don't have a choice. They have to do what people say anyways. And now suddenly, when the people aren't there to tell them what to do,
They have a choice.
right, they don't know how to make decisions and they don't know how to take ownership because they haven't learned that skill. And then I also think of that kind of for teachers. Like in the teaching environment, a lot of times admin don't give teachers choice. And so what's the result? Teachers who don't take ownership and they don't take risk and they don't try to think outside of the box because they've never had to. It's not even that they don't want to, they don't possess that skill. And it's possible that you could be a teacher that grew up in the American education system and have no idea how to take ownership because you've never been given a choice your entire life.
Look, I was literally just talking to a teacher just yesterday, and it's because we had to go up to clean to like the band hall or whatever. Not really clean, just basically get it ready for the summer so they could come in and wax. And I saw a teacher friend, and I asked her how it was going, whatever, and she was like, she just kind of like broke down in tears, and she's like, I don't do anything during the day, like other than like my classes, and like that's it. Like sometimes I find it hard to wake up. Like she had like no ownership of like her life,
That's
and
a
I
lot.
was and I was just like,
Tell her to call in. We'll help her.
I don't understand. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like, do you realize how many books I've read? Like, da da da. But that's the type of person I am. Like, I'm always fighting for time to do more things that I want to do, to take ownership of my own, like, just intelligence. Like, I want to just read books to be smart. I want to watch more YouTube videos, whether it be for entertainment or for informational purposes. Like I'm always trying to like learn new things, and I'm taking it upon myself because like I just grew up thinking that if you knew a lot of things, that meant that you were smart. So I don't know if that it does or not, but I think that you're right that teachers don't get a lot. I mean, how many times have you heard this? Well, admin just wants me to do this, and you know what? This is good enough. So like that's it. If they don't like it, they can fire me.
I've heard that a lot.
You know what? And they're like, they're not going to fire me over this because that's not even my contract to be doing XYZ. So like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm just going to do this. You know, there's a lot of teachers that say that, and there's a lot of teachers that are probably saying that right now when it comes to this online learning stuff, you know?
Well, and I think we've just hit such an important word because, you know, like ownership is a major buzzword right now in education. And it's like everybody's talking about like students need ownership. How do we get ownership? How do we create ownership? Well, I think we have to definitely learn from Schlechte and consider like if we're going to teach kids ownership, which going back into starting school next year, whether it's virtually or in class, like traditionally, kids still need ownership. So kids aren't going to have ownership because you tell them to, right? So it's about
Have ownership.
right.
Okay. Next.
Right.
We're moving on.
That's
So-
like telling them your plan.
Right. So,
Yeah,
I mean, the
uh-huh.
thing is, we have to design lessons that give them choices so that they have to take ownership. And I think back to some of the things that we've done as a team whenever we used to all teach together. Like, you know, we would do band camps and band retreats and like whatever, where we presented the kids with like puzzles and games and problems that they had to solve. And we weren't there saying you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way. It was like total choice, and they had incentive. They were competing against each other. There was a prizes that could be won. And I mean, all along we're teaching those kids like, take a stand, be a problem solver, figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So
I know who this guy is. I Googled him, and I have one of his books. I haven't read it yet, but I have one of his books.
well, there you
Well,
go.
it's a good time.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, might as well. I guess
Good
maybe I
time.
should read it.
So I guess, you know, like the thought moving forward is like, you know, I tried to do that like this year, you know, because I was at a new school. And so I'm trying to create the right classroom environment where they're taking things upon themselves and, you know, they really have a part in like how well they do, you know, which they did. They did really well. And that's, you know, in person, you know, we had these conversations, like we stopped to have conversations. Like some classes, I wouldn't even start playing. We just talk about ownership stuff and dissect the different levels they're learning, you know, like I would do that. And it worked. You know, we wouldn't do it. I would pick a day, I try to make sure it was good, and we would just talk about it. You know, they would take notes, and then we would always kind of go back and refer to that. If something didn't go well, I go back to that. Now, why didn't that go well? It's because y'all are low-level learners right there. You see what I'm saying? You know? And they're like, yeah. Now, see if y'all can flip it, and let's do the same thing and see how it changes. And then it's like, it magically, it changes. And I'm like, you see? There you go. You know? And you don't, I say the things the same way. I make a big deal because they changed something and I didn't, and that's why it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So now the question, I guess I was going there with this is like the question is, yeah, it's easy to do things like that in person. We're gonna have to start thinking, how do we do that when I can't reach out and like,
Right.
so whenever
Mhm.
you're on the other side of the computer,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and I agree. So I mean, I think any educator that you say like, "Hey, do you think kids should have ownership?" Everyone's gonna go, "Yeah," but ownership is a skill. Like they have to learn that skill, and so we have to put them in situations to help them learn those skills. So
What a stock education. Like, should kids have XYZ? Yeah, excellent.
how?
And then no one,
What
no,
do we do?
no one
Yeah.
says like, this
Right.
is how you do it. This is what you should do.
But I
Like,
think a big thing on this is for admin, especially, to realize that a lot of your teachers don't have ownership either, and it's because they don't have choice. And so, like, we have to create a campus culture where people get some choices. And I mean, it doesn't mean that they get every choice for everything, because we have to have some sort of framework of how we're going to operate together. But like, let them have choices on the things that matter. I mean, my wife, for example, gets on to me all the time because my default answer for anything my children say to me is no. Like, can we? No. No, that's just a bad idea always, because 9 times out of 10 it is. But she always gets on to me and she says, why not? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It just, and she's like, if it doesn't matter, then let them. And so, like, I'm learning, like, I have to give them those choices. Like, I don't have to always say no. I can say, go ahead sometimes, even though it may not be what I think. So,
Interesting.
well, and okay, so I think that it's a double-edged sword just a little bit, because like you give students and teachers all of this choice. Well, that's all fine and good, but like if you don't teach them how to choose, then that's a big issue, because
right.
I mean think about, like, you go to school to be a teacher and you don't learn how to teach. You spend 4 years in college and you don't learn how to teach, and then you get dumped into this classroom and you say you have all of this teacher, what do they call it? It's like this big word that's it, what does it say, where the teachers are allowed to do whatever they want in their class?
Autonomy.
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 Yeah.
Autonomy, like, oh, they get dumped in this classroom, they have all this autonomy, you can do whatever you want to this classroom, you can teach however you want, and then it's like, I'm in my classroom and I have no idea, because I'm given the ability to choose, but I don't have this skill, and then
Right.
I was never taught how to choose, and then I wasn't taught how to do things, so I don't even have.
But you probably can write a heck of a good lesson plan.
Let me tell
Yeah,
you what.
yeah,
Let me tell you
I
what.
can write a real good lesson plan that'll get me an A.
It's true.
So I think that's the same thing with like students, is like you can give them all of this choice that's possible, but if you don't teach them how to choose, and if you don't do it in small increments that expands over time, it's just like the culture in your class when you first start. Like, you have to come in very first day of school like hard and strong, and then you slowly
Yeah.
lighten up. So
Oh
that
no,
way,
we don't lighten up on this end. We keep strong all the way to the end.
Right.
Always, I'm in their face until the last day of school.
Well, I think that's just so profound. I think this is such a cool topic tonight, is just challenging educators to start really thinking about and realizing, like, do you teach ownership, and how do you do it? And maybe you
and
do, and maybe
We're
you're doing
flipping
it
the
well.
classroom, kind of. It's already flipped. We're flipped, but it's just like
we're so flipped.
thinking on the other side, like you're thinking on the receiving end,
Yeah.
like like how are they receiving this? And if they, it's it all kind of comes into like how much you care, But ownership is just like, okay, I care about this at level 1, so I'm gonna do this. I care at level 5, so I'm like everything you say, I'm gonna receive it. I'm gonna write things down. I'm gonna like think how I can apply it. If I care even higher, I'm gonna like take it to the next level. I'm gonna remember it. So what your kind of ownership kind of translate to kind of care, So I
Mhm.
talk about that a lot because, especially like in music, like you can put an instrument to your face and just whine,
Mhm.
But like now, if you're someone with a high level of ownership, like you care what people think, or you care about
What you
the sound you produce, you're gonna do more to be able to make a better sound. So, like thinking about that whenever you're in your classroom, if they care either about you or about themselves and stuff like that, they're going to receive the information because they care. So that's ownership.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. All
Thank
right,
you.
guys. That's it for tonight. So
Yeah. So there you go. Go. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
and do it.
we appreciate you. Go change the world.
One virtual class at a time.
Do something big.
That's right.